So Marianne you were trying to remember
Oh,
the name
I
of
was
our
trying to remember the
podcast.
name of our podcast. It's been a little
Something,
while
there's a
since.
species in there,
Okay.
right? Something, someone is something.
Yeah, no. We have our names in there because it's good advertising, Ben, right? Mohanraj and Rosenbaum. That part I've
Are
got.
slime molds.
Our slime mills. I just read
No,
one of my students
naked
wrote
mole
a
rats.
no
What are
no
we again?
one of my students just wrote a really good story about a slime mold god that ends up being like a video. Actually, I don't want to give it away because hopefully they send it out and it gets
Mohanraj and
published.
Rose. Welcome to
Yeah.
Mohanraj and Rosenbaum are slime mold gods.
Oh, okay. For today. Yes. Sounds good. Sounds good. It's making me think of all the Terry Pratchett little gods of, Anoia, I think is the god of things stuck in drawers that you're,
Ooh,
you know,
that's good.
you
That's
you
good.
pray to her when you're trying to get the drawer
When you're
open.
trying
All
to get the
right.
drawer open. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So,
That's handy.
yeah, small obstacles. God of getting rid of small obstacles, perhaps, is a more generalizing thing. So,
Oh, okay. Like a pint size
yeah,
Ganesh.
very, very little. So, okay. So, we have not recorded in a while, and I'm Marianne, and this is Ben.
I mean, if you
And
want, we could
yeah,
also
yeah.
switch.
Oh no, I cannot be Ben. That is very clear to me. So you could maybe be me. But
Interesting.
I don't
Can
think
you wait? Here's my question. Can you not only not be Ben in person? Could you be Ben on the page?
I don't think I could be Ben on the page. I think you have a very
Could you do a Ben pastiche? Is my question.
I'm not a pastiche person, like I'm not a style,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you, David Moles, etc. Like you guys have like a command of style, and you can be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna like now write in this person's style or that person's style, and
Uh-huh. Okay.
that's very difficult for me. I'd write like me mostly. I've been writing like me for 30 years, and I'm really quite set in my ways at this point.
Sounds
So,
good.
so um every once in a while I'll do an exercise with the students in class where we're,
Yeah.
like 10 minutes things. And it is a good like moment to play and be like, oh, I could do something where I try to be, very, I don't know,
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
somebody-ish, but it doesn't
Somebody-ish.
last very long. So,
Yeah.
all right, we were going to check
Anyway, so
in.
you're going to be you and I'm going to be me. That sounds good.
Yes,
Let's do that.
yes. And we're going to check in. How are you? How's your writing? What are you working on?
I am in the last sprint
Mm-hmm.
for The Ghost and the Golem, my
Mm-hmm.
interactive Jewish historical fantasy, uh, you know, Isaac Bashevis
Mm-hmm.
Singer-ish sort of fantasy interactive fiction, choose your own adventure kind of thingy. And it's really big.
Mm-hmm.
Like I apparently like branching.
Branching
It's
is great.
already it's already like way more words. I don't know. It's between 2 and 3 times the size of the Unraveling. Like it's a
Yeah.
mammoth thing. And it's I'm having super fun, but also am completely under the gun and I'm way over deadline. Like I was basically
Mm.
going to be done at the end of March, and I kind of arranged my life. So I was like, that's, March is going to be like, I'm just going to buckle down. I'm going to get it done. And now it's like the end of April, still not done,
Mm-hmm.
still. And I've just sort of ramped up. I'm actually writing significantly more than I ever have in my life. Like every
Yeah.
week is more than I ever wrote in a week in my life. Like I'm just in
Yeah.
complete, like on a roll lockdown, which is great. And also like, I mean, I guess it's sort of stabilized. Like I hit the end of March and I was like, I've pushed all these things out of the way so that I could focus on this. And now they all had like ticking clocks, right? Like all of I don't know, I
Mm.
was doing WisCon volunteering and I had to like, and volunteering at the synagogue. Like I was, I had taken on at some point like helping translate the Siddur into English, and I don't know, there was like a million things, right? And all the things that I was neglecting in my life, not so much work, but like, to some extent work. Anyway, that was all just like I was like, now I can't maintain this pace. So the beginning of this month, it was a little like the writing slowed, I think, a little bit because I had to clear that out. But now I'm sort of back onto. I mean, I think, twigged early enough to the fact that I wasn't going to be done that I was basically like just started saying no to things like crazy. So there was a
Mm.
backlog of like things that I had previously said yes to, and then so far I've just been like, nope, nope. Um, my son had an opening night. I did go to that. My son had an opening night in an opera that he's singing
Wow.
in. He sings the first notes that you hear in the opera as a
Oh my
solo,
gosh.
downtown in Theater Basel. And I was a little perplexed. I was like, he's a really good singer. And like, but he's not a professional singer. And like, it's not even his major.
Mm-hmm.
In they have a focus in high school, and Aviva's major was, but no, it's just he likes to sing. But he auditioned for this, and I was like, and he's at the opera. But
Mm-hmm.
it turns out, I once I saw it, I was like, oh, I get it, because there's this very clever thing going on, where it's you first enter the opera, and in the lobby, in the this huge lobby in front of the theater, they've built an entire stage, and they do an entire mini version, like a summary version of Haydn's Die Schöpfung, the creation by Haydn,
Mm-hmm.
in all done by high school kids. Like they auditioned and brought in all these high school kids from the entire
Uh,
region. So it's very selective, like they're, I don't know, good high
mm-hmm.
school kids, but like it's all them doing it. And I was like, that's very interesting. And then they they break up and they go in for the main show where
Mm-hmm.
the main people are singing. But while the main people are singing, they project on the screen behind them the after party where the high school kids are in their dressing room. All the like, there's four phones that these high school kids are passing around between them, and they're like in the after party. And so the opera is going on. And at first I was like, "What is this?" And then I realized they actually match, like they actually
Yeah, yeah,
interleave. Like
yeah, yeah.
it's an opera about anyway. So I was like, "Oh, I get it. It's like Noah is singing in the opening act of the play within a play, the opera within an opera."
Right, 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 right.
So anyway, but so it was fun. Anyway, I took time off for that, but other than that, I have just been cramming like massive amounts of words.
Mm-hmm. So
Um,
you're going to be out here soon for WisCon, I'm hoping
yes.
you'll be done by then. But if
Oh
not,
my God.
I'm having these visions of like you read what is it, Dodie Smith, I think, who wrote I Capture the Castle. Have you read that?
I have.
Yeah, right. Like I'm having this
Wait,
vision.
have I? I've read that. There's I Capture the Castle, and there's We Have Always Lived in the Castle.
That's a
And David
different
Moles
book.
once mashed them up for a reading
No,
poster,
no.
and since then
Yeah.
I cannot distinguish the actual books. And I've definitely read one and possibly both of them.
Well, I Capture the Castle. Can I spoil it for you? Because
I don't
I
know if you
can't.
should.
Oh, maybe I should.
Also, for
Well,
all our listeners, you shouldn't spoil it.
but it's all right.
We'll review. We'll have a I
Okay.
Capture the Castle episode afterwards. I mean, if you could say the salient thing,
Yeah,
that's not
you
spoilery.
should. Well, the salient thing, no, it is, but the salient thing is in fact the end of the book. So it's a huge
Okay,
spoiler. So it gives away
fair.
the book. So never mind. There's something relevant to your situation
When
in
I
this
read it,
book,
I will be
and you
like,
should read
"Oh,
it.
this
Everyone
is
should
the
read it. It's a
thing."
great book. It's this, yeah, and you'll know what I wanted to do and that I,
Yeah.
restrain myself
Okay.
from doing.
Yeah, I will, and I
So,
will admire it. I will be full of admiration for
but
you having restrained yourself.
you should be. Yeah, I know, right? My willpower will be strong. So, but Jodie Smith, people, I think if I'm remembering her name right, she also wrote 101 Dalmatians, and it always kind of
Oh,
amazes me that this author wrote these two incredibly different texts, both
wow,
of which are great in different ways, right?
amazing. Now
So
I should want to read them both and
anyway,
like mash them up.
putting that aside, so well, perhaps you should. So, okay, I Capture the Castle though is a very writer focused book, so it's a
Yeah,
good one for writers to look at.
yeah, yeah.
101 Dalmatians, not so much. Although the movie with all the fashion stuff was really actually quite
Uh-huh.
entertaining. I really liked it. The recent movie.
Ah,
Now I can't remember the name of
oh,
it, but if
the prequel, the one with about Cruella, how she becomes Cruella in
yeah,
film.
yeah,
Emma Stone.
I don't know, but it was great.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. So, okay, back to okay. You've done your status update.
pretty much. I
Okay.
mean, the thing I was gonna about
Mm-hmm.
the if I'm still doing it at WisCon, like the reason that I feel under such pressure is because I have all this travel coming up. Um,
Mm.
like we, and I can maintain this pace in this. I have this sort of like it's kind of funny that now I have this kind of the way I'm now dealing with living in two countries is to have like a work like a ascetic spare life in one country and like a party all the time in the other country. Do you know what I mean? America's my
Uh-huh.
party country. Like I'm
Right.
coming, I'm gonna be, and I'm like I'm also gonna be with my parents and like helping out with my dad, and then with my sister, and I don't know, just seeing all my friends, and then going to like WisCon, ReaderCon, Camp Nerdly, IGX, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Whoa, that's a
which would be
lot.
great if I already had something to promote. That's just the original plan. But like the worst case scenario is I'm running around doing all these things, like still trying to finish this thing. So that we're going to try to minimize.
You have a very heavy schedule. I've been mostly trying to avoid scheduling this summer. So I've got WisCon, and then you and I are teaching at Clarion early
Right. That
June,
too. Exactly.
which is
That's
probably
right in the middle of it.
that's gonna eat the week, right? Like I'm not
Oh my
expecting to
God. It's going to
do
completely eat the week.
anything that week except Annalie Newitz is coming to town, so I'm doing a reading
Yep.
with her.
Them.
Them, sorry, thanks. But then beyond that, I think I've managed to stay unscheduled for the rest of the summer, which is
That's terrific. I feel like
shocking.
being unscheduled is kind of like a secret thing I didn't know about. Like I'm writing so much now. And there's some way in which I had this kind of magical thinking. For the last 20 years as a writer, I've had this
Hmm.
kind of magical thinking about writing productivity, where I'm
Hmm.
like, it's sort of like this mystical thing where it's like, why aren't I more? And if I only, and I try
Hmm.
and sit down and whatever. And like, obviously, there was a lot of like, I think, I don't know whether it's muscle memory or like personality things together, whatever was keeping me like there was or like whatever distractibility, figuring out the right dosage of like dopamine drip from various
Hmm.
activities. Like there was a lot of things going on, but like it's very funny that now I'm like that the surprise to me now that I'm able to write like
Hmm.
2,500 words in a day is that like it requires an amount of time commensurate with, you know what I mean? I'm like, wow, I've just been sitting in this fucking chair for 9 hours. Like that's the part that did not occur to me. Somehow I figured the day would arrive when I'd be able to have this breakthrough and write
Yeah.
a lot, and it would just be kind of like my normal life, except more words were getting done. But no, it's not. It means like, do you know what I mean? It means like
Yeah.
I am not doing the
So
cooking. Yeah,
I have three thoughts in
yeah.
relation to that. One is I think that first became clear to me in my PhD program where
Mm,
Kevin and I broke up. He left town. I had finished my coursework. I had a I was teaching a little bit, but that was basically it. And I was reading. I had a year to read
mhm.
and then write.
Yeah,
Um, and it was the first time in my life where I'd been that unscheduled, right?
yeah,
Like, and I was just like, oh, in fact, I wasn't even teaching. The year I was reading, I was just reading for a year. I had to read
yeah.
120 books, and
Hmm.
and I was writing some of that time too. And it was a very different way of living, I guess. So
Uh-huh.
that's one thing. Second thing is I was reading several years later a book about getting things done, one of those,
Was it the
productivity
book
books.
Getting Things Done?
I don't think
There
so.
is a book named that.
I know
Yeah.
it might have been that one, but it might have been something else. So I don't want to
Okay.
say for certain, but it's
Sure. Sure.
something in that mode.
Yeah.
And he says in the book, travel is
Mm.
lovely and seductive and will
Hmm.
totally destroy your ability to work. So you
Yeah.
must limit how much travel you
You
do.
must stay
And
put. Yeah.
and I read that and I had this incredible moment of like, no, that
Yeah.
can't that, I refuse. I want to travel
Yeah.
all the time. But he's absolutely right. So it like
Well,
starting
and
to,
I think there are people who can adapt to that. Like that, like I think you need a routine. And if all you do is travel, I feel like
yeah.
Corey like will
Yeah,
just yeah.
well, I mean,
I don't
it's
know.
not that you can't work. I mean, my agent once told me that what's her name who writes the Scottish nurse Outlander
Uh-huh.
author Diana
Okay.
Gabaldon.
Sure.
He was
Yeah.
I was a little slow getting him a draft of something, and he was like, Diana Gabaldon writes in taxis when she's in foreign countries going
Right,
to the
right, right.
airport. She just writes all the time. So yes, there may be some
But
people.
but I feel like the worst case is you travel like 5 times a year. Like if you
Yeah.
travel literally every day, like you never see your bed, you're always in a
Mm,
hotel, then I figure you adapt to where it's just like a
mm,
taxi feels like a natural place to write. But like if travel is a disruption of your ordinary
right.
routine, I think that's where it's like,
It's
anyway.
I don't know. So I I write on the plane. I write
Yeah.
at, I go on retreats. I write there certainly. I write at cons. I
Yeah.
block out time and write. But it is nonetheless disruptive because
Sure.
there is, packing and unpacking and
Yeah. Yeah.
everything that was left undone while you were out of town that now has to be dealt with at the
Right.
household, etc. Right. So
Right.
then so it's not even just the weekend of travel, it's the next 3 days are disrupted as
Yeah, I mean,
well.
and what I'm
Yeah.
finding is how like micro it's I find it absurd, like just because I'm under all this time pressure, how like
Hmm.
micro optimized I'm getting, where I'm like, I will not go to the store that's the second farthest from my house.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like I will
Yeah.
only go to the store that's literally across the one I have to get on a bike for. You know what I mean? Like I'm
No,
just
no, no, no.
finding that
Alex Gurevich at one point was like, Marianne, why are you not taking an Uber? Like you could then read or write in the Uber
mm,
rather than driving myself to some whatever thing,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it's he very much optimizes that way. I mean, it's you have to have the money to throw at the Uber, but assuming you can afford that, it's a
yeah.
different way of thinking. Wait, and I had a third thing. Wait, what was the third thing? I had
Sorry.
two, one, two, and then we went off on this like long tangent about. Now I've completely forgotten. Guys, I have to apologize. I'm a little hungover. I had a family event last night and I don't drink very much, and my uncles kept bringing me drinks. And so I blame Raj uncle, who, once he discovered that I like whiskey sours, was like, hey, let me get you another one.
Here's
Let me
another
get you
one.
another. I know. And so I don't want to be rude to my uncle. So that I may be a little more distractible than normal. One thing you said was the calibrated dopamine drip of your
Yeah,
various activities, and
yeah,
I was thinking, well, I calibrate mine by taking my ADHD meds,
yeah.
so I have a very very steady dopamine drip now, which is very helpful for like a literal dopamine
Well,
drip.
I
Yeah,
also
so
find hilarious how my relationship with computer games has evolved,
oh
right?
yeah.
So I'm kind of addictive about computer games, right?
Hmm.
And they're very like for lots of reasons that are interesting on both like kind of neurology and also emotional levels. Like I feel like
Hmm.
where it's completely feels like an absence from, they draw you in so much and then it completely feels like an absence from life.
Hmm.
I mean, much like writing does when you're really into it, but like
Hmm.
you get to become other people, but like of course it's doing the work for you when you're playing a computer game. But I used to have so I went through a phase where I would like I don't know, just have like an orgy of abandon of sort of like I don't know, lose a month to civilization or something, and couldn't get out and was kind of self-hating about it. I was just like, I was up till 3 a.m. again, like I don't know what's going on, and like it was kind of a problem. And then I kind of figured out how to rein it in and be like pace myself and like occasionally have like a weekend of like I'm just gonna play computer games, but like kind of like make a spreadsheet only if I'd attained various goals and whatever. And then I
Hmm.
started doing that on like maybe like for the week. Like if I once I was ahead on writing and chores and everything for the week, I was like,
Hmm.
now I can play. But then like, those days that I played, I'd still lose like a few hours. And now I have this on a micro dosing, like I literally every 250 words play 2 minutes. Every like I stack them up so I can play 8 minutes at a time. But like
Uh-huh.
each at the moment, like I cranked it down as I'm ramping up
Yeah.
like I started with 10-minute
Yeah.
break,
Yeah.
Minecraft breaks, and now it's like at the drip is 2 minutes. So like after each half hour and after each 250 words, like I
Hmm.
get another 2 minutes, and then I like check them off, and I'll be like, okay, well I've gotten like now I've got like 10 minutes, so I'll go play for 10 minutes. It's hilarious how it's this
Yeah. Yeah.
tiny little injection. But like it's actually like the rhythm is where it's sort of like you've written 250 words and you're like, all right, I'm just gonna take a tiny little micro break. Anyway, I it's very funny how I'm like, hyper optimizing the like
That's wacky. That's just weird, Ben. So, I mean, so also, I mean, even like I can't, I would have trouble writing in 250 word chunk. Like I write in scenes, right? And my
yeah,
scenes are typically about an 45 minutes to an hour to draft a scene. Like I have a
okay,
very kind of
yeah,
standard scene length. And so that's just so then that just ends up being
hmm,
my natural break. I write my scene, get
yeah,
up and get a cup of tea, whatever. So but I don't play, and if I play computer games, I have two computer games that are the only ones I'm basically playing now. And I have been really resisting trying anything new for a
yeah,
couple years
sure,
because I can't, I feel like I can't afford the time. And
right,
so my two games are Polytopia, which
mhm.
is a phone version of Civ, basically, and it's very short, simple. You
It feels
can,
like it should be a poly
I
phone version
know,
of Civ, although yeah,
but it is not. So I like it a lot. I play it all the time. I like it in part because I'm now good enough at it. I always win, and so it's very
Uh-huh.
satisfying in that sense.
Soothing.
Like, but also that like I don't even have to finish it. I know that I'm
Yeah,
going to
yeah, yeah.
win, and so there's
Right.
no I can put it down very
Uh-huh.
easily.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's my
Sure.
like killing
Restful.
5 minutes thing,
Uh-huh.
whatever. And then the other game I play is Don't Starve, and now that I can lose masses of time to, so I set a timer, and
Yeah, yeah.
I play it usually when I'm really stressed out at the rest of my life. And
Hmm.
I'm like, you hit that mindset of like, I don't wanna, like
Yeah,
where I'm
yeah.
just like, the demands are too much, and you've regressed to a 3-year-old state where all you want to do is
Yeah,
have a tantrum, right?
yeah.
And so that's when I pull out Don't Starve. I set my little, Alexa, set a 1 hour
Hmm.
timer, and I start playing. And again, it's not a game you finish, I think. I've
Hmm.
never,
Hmm.
so it doesn't really matter when I stop. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so, you're just trying not to starve every day.
It is grounding to be like,
Yeah,
like however bad your life is, it's not like just trying not to starve today. Like
exactly. Yeah, no, it's
that's
true. It's true, right?
yeah,
Or freeze to death or be
right.
burned by the sun
Eaten by
or
wolves,
yeah, yeah. No, it's dogs. It's like these hounds that
dogs.
come at you. But yes, yes. No, I know way too much about the lore of Don't
Well,
Starve.
it's
So
not that I actually
it's
stop after every 250 words. I didn't want to give that impression. It's like
okay.
250 words earns a checkbox, and then like
Okay.
it might be after 250, or it might be. I don't I mean 2 minutes is too
Yeah,
short, but usually it's after like 1,000 words or after like a
yeah.
couple,
Okay.
like an hour or something. But the thing is that it like I'm noticing the increments, and I think
Right.
it's more that I stop when like the tension builds up because that's the thing that always used to
Mm,
derail me is like I both love writing and also there's this building resistance in me where I'm like, okay,
hmm
that was enough. That was enough. You know what I
I
mean?
think
I
I
want
think
to pull back.
you're tired, right? At least for me, I get mentally tired.
Yeah.
Takes exertion to like write well, right? And I need a little breathing space. It's like if I'm in the garden and I'm weeding for an hour,
Yeah.
I need a little break from that before I can go back and do another round, right?
Yes, but I also think that the metaphor of tired is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And I
Yeah.
used to think about it in terms of energy, and we often talk about it in terms of energy, and
Okay.
but and I think we might have talked about this before, but I started thinking about it in terms of this Minskian model of like different subcomponents of the self competing with one another,
Okay, wait,
right?
you have to stop. I don't know who Minsky is,
All right,
so
so Marvin Minsky had this book,
okay.
Society of Mind, in which
Okay.
it was an early AI, like this is AI before they knew how to do AI, but it's an early like way of thinking about it. And the idea was how do you get something to have complex behaviors, right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
like sometimes it does this, sometimes it's this, it's reactive, it's nuanced, it could do different things. And one way of doing that is to say, well, you decompose it into sub-agencies. And so if you
Mm-hmm.
watch his point, his analogy was, it's like, well, if you watch a little kid like playing with blocks, like they're playing with blocks, completely obsessed until suddenly they're like super hungry and they knock over all the blocks and they demand something to eat, or like they just want to
Mm-hmm.
sleep, right? And what's actually going on, according to him, theoretically, is that like, well, there's a playing sub-agency and a sleeping sub-agency and an eating sub-agency, and kind of like one of them has the wheel. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
one of them is like we are currently doing this activity, but the other ones are kind of building up. Like at some point it switches,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's interesting to, and that feels very true for me. Like sure,
Mm-hmm.
if I've been writing for literally 7 hours, I am probably physically tired, but I get antsy sometimes after half an hour. Right. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not like I'm out of energy. And I think I need a snack, I need a break, I need to do something. But it's like the it's like that my mind is racing and it wants to do other things and
Okay.
it's going. And that's I think
So
about that. Go ahead.
no, finish your thought, but I think
Well,
energy is maybe I think I mean focus more than energy for
yeah,
myself.
yeah,
But
yeah, exactly.
but go
Well, the
ahead.
thing
Yeah.
about focus, right? My focus drifts, but I feel like this is my mental model, and I don't know to what extent it's true. I feel like what happens is there's competing areas of focus, and that it's like a currency or like political capital. It's like chits. Like the guy who wants to write in my brain only has
Mm-hmm.
so much, um, you know, money to spend. And so it's like the longer I write, the more the other people are getting restless, the more they start to form a coalition of like, let's not write. And
Yeah.
like to get myself to write effectively for a long time, I have to produce like coalitions in my brain
Mm-hmm.
that are like on board, right?
Ben
With the
Ben
like, What's that?
You've been living in Switzerland too long, but go on.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Yeah.
exactly. It's very much a Swiss model, or perhaps, I mean, I don't know, maybe more of an Italian model. It's not quite as, it's a little more fractious than the Swiss. But it's like you have to form like a majority, enough of the people in the,
Yeah.
but it is alliances. It does
Yeah.
basically feel like when I make some kind of little game for myself where I'm like, after 250 words,
Hmm.
we can play Minecraft, like the
Yeah.
Minecraft guy in my head is on board and he's on the side of the writing guy then. Instead of them being enemies, if somebody else is like, I want to take a nap, they're like, shut up, we're writing / playing Minecraft. Like this is our activity. They're like buddies now, right? And that's like getting
So
them aligned.
I
Yeah.
see what you're saying. I don't think that's how it works for me,
Yeah.
right? So at least, and so I'd say for me, it's a combination of two things. One is it is just hard for me to maintain focus, even with the meds. The meds help. Vyvanse helps a lot. But I'm very distractible, and not by anything I'm interested in. It's just distraction,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's not that there's other things I want to do. It's just that they're distractions and I lose the thread of what
Yeah.
I was writing or concentrating on.
Yeah.
And then the other piece, and I can, I used to be able to when I was younger. I once wrote a story in, 1 7-hour stint at a coffee shop. That's how I wrote
Yeah.
7 Cups of Water. And I don't know that I can do that anymore. Like
I
now
just want to
it's,
say that it's pretty funny that if you were ordering roughly one drink an hour while you were at the coffee shop in order
yeah, I
to
know. Yeah, I know, right? It would be funny, right? Yeah, yes. I don't know if I was, but I don't think I
in order to
was. But
keep your,
yes, yeah,
your
yes. It would
seat, you'd
be it
have
would
to
be
every
seven
hour.
lattes. Yeah,
It would
yeah,
be seven
yeah.
seven cups
Yeah,
of, yeah.
yeah. And then I would explode into a caffeine frenzy. But so part of it is focus, and the other piece of it is, so I've been in therapy with Jed, and I have been doing couples therapy, which I keep
Oh wow.
meaning to write about and have not
Uh-huh.
figured out a way to encapsulate it, but I guess I'm talking about it now. So
Yeah, you're talking about it on a podcast. I know
on a
you could talk about it
podcast,
on a podcast.
yes. But so we started it uh, after sometime during the pandemic because we were having a very hard time talking to each other without fighting, and it was a
Yeah.
whole host of things that had come up, and so we've been now in couples therapy for more than a year and a half, I think, and it's been very helpful. But in the process, of course, like I'm poly, I talk to Jed in therapy, and then like I often come and talk to Kevin afterwards about like, what did you guys talk about in therapy? So
Uh-huh.
it's
Right.
almost like Kevin and I are having impromptu couples therapy as well as a result.
Like post
Um,
couples therapy glow or whatever.
something, right? And so, or couples therapy once removed or something,
Yeah.
where there's no
Yeah.
actual therapist around, but we're talking about some of the same issues. One thing that has become clear to me that I did not know about myself, a whole bunch of things came clear that I didn't know about myself, but I really, really hate being told what to do. I have an
Ah,
incredible aversion to it, and
sure.
it makes me, I mean, basically like a kind of like, you can't make me kind of mindset that is like a
This does not
complete,
come as a surprise to me
well, maybe
about
a
you.
complete reversion to childhood, but it's true even for myself, right? Even
Sure.
if it's
Got
me
it.
telling myself to
Even
do
you telling you
something,
what to do. Yeah,
I still
exactly.
I still have the "you
Sure.
can't make
Sure.
me"
Yeah, yeah,
response
yeah.
to it,
Well, I
right? As
have
if,
that too. And a lot of the
yeah,
times that's what happened. That's what would happen when I would go on a
yeah,
binge of playing computer games for
yeah,
3 days. I would be like, fuck
yeah,
you. Fuck
yeah.
you. I've had enough to me. I'm talking
Right,
to me.
right,
Yeah.
right. But the thing is, I think
And I feel
what,
like when that happens, what had happened is we were in all out war, the different
yeah,
parts of myself, the deal had broken down, the Minecraft, and I would found that it was counterproductive because I was like, I'm kind of addicted to this. I should
yeah,
just
yeah,
swear off at cold turkey. I should avoid it. And what would happen with that is that would just be open war. Like
yeah,
the
yeah,
little guy who wants to have fun inside me would just be like, well, fuck you then. If I ever get the wheel, I'm absolutely not giving it up.
yeah.
Right. And that's why I would be like sort of stewing in self-hate, but like driven to do the thing because I'm like, shut up. Yeah.
But that's the
And
thing,
then
like
making them
when you're in that,
buddies, like making the alliance is like has been
mhm,
totally the solution to that.
yeah. I think for me, when I'm in that kind of mindset and I'm doing something because someone told me to do something and I don't want to, I don't enjoy the thing I'm doing.
Oh
Right?
no.
Like I'm very aware the entire time I'm playing the video game or whatever it is that I really would be happier if I were writing now,
Well, I'm
right? And
sort of
it's
miserable, but on
yeah.
the other hand, I wouldn't say I'm constantly aware. I think that what happens is that when I come to consciousness, well, if I'm up playing if at 3 a.m. playing this game and I shouldn't be and I'm ruining everything,
Mm-hmm.
then like every time I come to consciousness, there's a flood of like guilt
You're
and
right.
like misery. But the game is very good at not having me come to consciousness. And
Right, right.
the effort of like having to face like I need to go to bed and clean up and still do the dishes because I still didn't do
Mm-hmm.
those and whatever, like that all requires like this. And therefore the longer I go, the less like mental energy and focus and like resolve I have to go do the things, and the more seductive it is to, because you can't, it is fun in the moments that I manage to
Mm-hmm.
banish the
Yeah.
consciousness, right? And that, but all that feels like it's a little Jungian. It's a little like, by this is the dark self, this is the shadow self that I don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like Jed in, like Jed's shadow
Mm-hmm.
or Ged's shadow
Mm,
in Wizard of
oh,
Earthsea. Like it's not going anywhere. That's you. That is also, you've unleashed it in the world. It's not, you must accept it to defeat it, right? And like he becomes one with the shadow.
yeah.
At least that's how I remember it.
I
Anyway, the
think
thing,
I think that's right. But
he wants to kill it and get rid of it and beat it
yeah,
and destroy it,
yeah,
and that's
yeah, yeah.
exactly wrong, right? Because it's a Jungian thing. So
Mm-hmm.
the point is that like by demonizing the thing, like somebody who is like fuck you, you can't make me, I'm going to blow up in your life, is a person who's been mistreated. Like that was that's a part of myself that I was
Yeah.
like, you can't have anything. And then
Mm-hmm.
that part of myself was like, fine, then I will fuck up everything. And to be like, hey, let's share. You know what I mean? To like
Mm-hmm.
create a concordance of self where it's like we all get to have what we want. Let's treat these needs. Let's treat all these needs as legitimate. All these things that I'm like, now, obviously some things are super normal stimulus and maybe aren't good for you. And I'm not saying like, the part of
Mm-hmm.
you that wants heroin, you should like, you know what I mean? But I mean, although on the other hand, Switzerland legalized heroin and it's helped a lot because to some extent, once you're already hooked on heroin, trying to not be is not, you know what I mean? Better
Mm-hmm.
you should be in a safe doctor's office with a
Yeah.
prescription for the correct
Well,
dosage.
I feel like
Anyway,
ADHD, ADD meds are mostly speed, basically, right?
okay.
Like, I mean, that's what they are, right?
Right.
So it's
So
so
it's
I
like
have
if
nowhere to stand on that. But
dosage, exactly.
yeah,
Dose it, like,
yeah.
yeah.
But the okay, sorry, we've covered so much. Hang on, I want to
Yeah.
finish saying one thing. I want to get away from the video game metaphor a little bit because
Okay.
I feel like video games are not the seductive thing for me, really,
Uh-huh.
right? Like
Sure.
I do
Sure, sure. Uh-oh. You froze.
only if I were on vacation or, somehow away from my life would I want to start a new game, basically. Because, like when I had cancer, I
Hmm.
remember people sent me a bunch of video games to play while I was going through treatment. And you recommended Waking Mars. And you said to me, you know, it is a limited
Okay.
time game you're going to play through, you're going to get to the end, it's going to take about this long, and
Huh.
that was perfect. Like
Uh-huh.
like then I could sort of plan for it. I don't
Was it
like
Waking Mars? Because I don't remember playing Waking Mars.
It
Huh.
was Waking Mars,
Okay.
so it's
I guess I played
lovely.
it.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a lovely game, lovely, very therapeutic, quiet, soothing game. Pretty sure it was you who recommended it. And
Monument Valley sounds like it's in that category and is like a time limited, beautiful little game.
yeah,
Anyway, go
yeah,
ahead.
that is also a lovely game, but that one I'd played.
Okay.
So but Waking Mars is also more exploring and less puzzle oriented, so very
Hmm.
very relaxing.
Yeah.
But most games are not that, like, anyway, like mostly I don't want an open-ended game at this point, right?
Hmm.
Like I
Hmm.
don't want to pick up some, even if I was reading a book, I don't want a book series that's going to go on forever infinitely.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
want to be able to have a sense of like this is gonna take this much of my time,
Hmm.
and I can allocate that, and then I'll be good. Kindle Unlimited has been a little dangerous in that regard. Like
Hmm.
I was traveling at one point, and I wanted something fluffy, and I started this romance novel, and I knew there were 19 books in the series. I didn't expect that I would read them all, right? Like I'm like,
Right.
but
Right.
she was a good
I can do just one.
but she was a good writer, and she did this very predictable thing of, at the end of by the time you got to the end of the novel,
Mm-hmm.
had been a hook for the sibling,
Mm.
the sister or the brother
Right.
of the main character
Yeah, you're
and their
just,
potential
yeah,
romance. And so then
yeah,
you're like, well, I got to know what happens to them. I mean, you know what's
gotta
going to
catch them
happen, but it
all.
doesn't matter.
Right.
And so I did end up reading all 19 of these books. And Darius, I'll put this in the show notes just in case anyone else is looking for
Yeah.
a charming, addictive series to like binge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in like I read them in like 5 days and I did nothing else. I just read one after another after another. I got to the end of the Kindle book and I was like, click, and
Right.
it's Kindle Unlimited, so it's not costing me any money per
Sure.
book. It's a
Sure.
subscription, and so it's super easy. I find that model fascinating and dangerous. But anyway, mostly I try to not take on things where I don't know how much time it's going to be. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I was going to try and get away from the time,
Mm-hmm.
from the negative things. So like,
Mm-hmm.
so some of what we're talking about is there are these activities that are enjoyable. But at least for me, if I play 3 hours of Polytopia in a year or 3,000 hours of Polytopia in a year, at the
Mm.
end of the year, it'll have made no difference in terms of like productivity. Like I won't
Sure.
have gained anything, right?
Yeah.
And I think as opposed to gardening, I want to talk about gardening because
Mm.
gardening is something that it's good for my health, it's good for my mental health, it's good for my peace of mind. Well, it's that same thing. It's good for my artistic creativity side of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just chock full of positives that make my
Yeah.
life better. But I garden in Chicago. The weather is often not super conducive, right? And
Yeah.
so for gardening, it's sort of a similar barrier to writing in that like there's some there's something that's saying like, oh, it's going to be a little cold. You're going to be cold for the first couple of
Uh-huh.
minutes, right? And at this point, I know that if I choose my activity correctly, like raking or whatever, I'm going to warm up, right? Within
Yeah.
5
Yeah.
minutes, I'll be good. And then I'm going to
Yeah.
want to garden all day long, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's so the kind of the bargain I've been making with myself for gardening, which is working really well, has been and the therapist has been very much like anytime I say, well, I should do this, she stops
Mm.
me. She's like, Marianne, no should, right? Like we're not we don't want to engage with the part of your brain that is like
Yeah.
doing this like
All should oriented.
should oriented. Instead, like let's she's a California therapist. I love her. She's
Uh-huh.
very like it's all about pleasure,
Hmm.
so like
Interesting.
we are motivated by pleasure, and
Hmm.
so let's think about like what is it that is going to be pleasurable about this relationship, what is going to then let's reinforce those pleasure activities, and then when
Right.
you are thinking about it again, what you're going to feel is like the pleasure and like, oh yeah, that's going to be fun, right? So it's a
Yeah.
way of resetting towards
Yeah.
towards towards acknowledging, enhancing the fun of it,
Mm-hmm.
and rather than the taskiness of it, right?
I do
And
think it's
so
an interesting claim that we are motivated by pleasure. I feel like it's an
I did
aspirational
say
claim.
she's a California therapist,
Well, but
right?
well,
So
well, right, right. It's interesting,
yeah,
right? Like it's an
yeah.
interesting because that I mean, and this is probably one. I have no idea if this is a
and
replicable
and
experiment or one
and
that's
I
been
and
mangled.
I don't want
But
to
you know about the
misrepresent her, so but
sure,
go
sure,
on,
sure.
go on.
But you know about the thing of I was very struck by this neurological pop
Mm-hmm.
science thing I read, which again caveats because please write us
Mm-hmm.
and tell us if this is like
Wrong.
subjected to replication
Yeah, yeah.
collapse or whatever. But like the thing where um, rats will choose dopamine over endorphins, basically. It's like a thing
Mm-hmm.
that is the motivation circuit in your brain is not actually like they used to think like the sort of classic Skinnerian thing was pain and pleasure, like you're positively for it.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out that like if you have this intermittent thing where you're not sure if it's going to happen and you're trying to find out and whatever, like you might get that's way more motivating than just like the button that always gives you pleasure is like less than
Mm-hmm.
the one that's like dangling the possibility of but maybe right like
Mm-hmm.
that the dopamine system which is engaged in like finding and getting and seeking
Mm-hmm.
is like actually distinct from the enjoying.
Right.
like
Yeah.
to a degree that's like odd, and like kind of hilariously counterintuitive in a way.
So I feel like
But I
you're
think your
taking
therapist is training you to like
right.
focus on that circuit instead of the one that's like, I don't have yet, I must acquire. Like, I must figure out, I must get there where I am not.
Well, hmm, I think the therapist is, I almost feel like you're having kind of a different, like the next level
Yeah.
conversation.
Okay.
Like she's still with us and with me. I'll speak only for
Uh-huh.
me at the point of, we had a bunch of bad fights
Yeah.
and my back of my brain got trained that like
Yeah.
being in this
This
environment
is
is
right.
is upsetting
Yep.
and
Yep. Yep.
stressful.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
so
Sure.
it is just building up a set of positive experiences, kind of like
Right.
maybe we don't talk about the subjects that were triggering the fights
Right.
and
All right.
until we have built up a buffer, right?
Oh,
Of
I that
like,
makes total sense. I totally believe that.
of
But I
like,
think that's creates safety, right? It create
yeah,
if you create more positive experiences and you dull the memory of like the negative ones, it creates like relaxation and safety, right? But what I'm saying is what's interesting is you have to consciously do that. It's not necessarily like that engine doesn't run by itself necessarily, right? You would
mm-hmm.
expect like, oh, a pleasurable thing, I'll go do that. But you sometimes have to actually train yourself to do the pleasurable thing,
Yeah,
which then creates all that response of like it's safe
right.
and I feel good
This
and I want to
is
be
this
here.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
But
that's
it's
the
not
thing with
necessarily what
that.
we're automatically drawn to.
Right, well, that's the thing with gardening, right? You think about gardening, and I think like my initial thought, and this is true of writing as well, right? My initial thought is it's going to be work, right?
Yeah.
And then my brain says, I don't want to do work. I want to goof off, right? And what I
Right.
forget is that it's and I mean, I now know enough that I can like consciously sit, kind of almost tell myself, Marianne, you don't have to do it for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Here's like, let's go see. Let's try this.
Right, right,
Let's
right,
go,
right.
let's go out for 5 minutes. Do 5 minutes of it. And if it's not working today, it's not working today.
It's very
But
much this
but
self-parenting vibe of
yeah,
like, let's
but
just go
yeah,
see.
let's go
We'll
see.
just
Let's
try,
go
honey.
see. And then odds are
Yeah,
99% of the time, once
sure.
I open
Once
the
you're,
file and start writing, once I put
yeah,
on my coat and go into the garden and start
yeah,
raking, I'm just happy, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
I want to keep going because I'm like, oh, I enjoy this. I'm like,
I
this
do
is
envy that a
fun.
little though, because I think I have a
Yeah.
different thing. So there's
Yeah.
this model in that my wife talks about. She's a therapist in terms of like the accelerator and the brake that people talk about in terms of like, for
Mhm.
instance, in like I don't know, therapy around sex and stuff. It's like you could
Okay.
be like because the accelerator and the brake are distinct is the point. You could be really into
Okay.
something and also totally shut down about it and not want it. Like, and making it more attractive does not help if there's a brake.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and vice versa, right? Like, so the interesting thing is that I have so much joy when writing is going well. I'm
Hmm.
so delighted with live I sort of feel like there's this tyranny of only getting to be one person. Like we live in a
Hmm.
society where we really have a script. We're only meant to be this one person. Like you've come up with this idea of who Benjamin Rosenbaum is, and you're just supposed to execute that forever. And that's very limiting. And like,
Hmm.
we don't get to be possessed by spirits. We don't get to, go visit the gods. We don't get to even like believe that our dreams are real. Like we're just sort of like supposed to do this. It's very like spare and Puritan and right
Hmm.
compared to the way that a lot of societies have constructed the self. Um, and writing is this nice little get out of jail free card where for a while you get to be these, and particularly because this is such a big work and
Hmm.
I've spent so long with these people, like I'm very deep into the reason it's one of the reasons it's going so fast is because I'm at the end of the book and I know everything
Yeah.
so well. I'm just taking dictation. Like I'm
Right.
just putting characters in a situation and then I like the part of
I
my
know. I
brain is
love that.
so hyper
Yeah.
developed now that knows what they would say. And really it's the same part of my brain that knows what I would say. That's how I be
Hmm.
me, is that I've
Right.
learned like this character of me
Hmm.
that I'm in, but that is the me, right? Like I firmly believe that is like we have this illusion about the self being this natural emergent thing of this natural like I just am that way, but like that is a thing we have rehearsed and produced. And anyway, it's such a vacation from just being me to go be all these other people and just listen to what they're saying. It's so pleasurable. But like that's the accelerator, right? Like that's joyful and it's fun and I'm drawn to it. But still, even if I'm in the midst of it, after not very long, like after half
Hmm.
an hour, whatever, some part of me is antsy and finds it like scary. I think a lot of it is like am I, like I'm as soon as there's something that I'm like my capacity for being in the unknown and resisting the fear that I'm going to do it wrong is sort of getting eaten away. So that pretty soon something comes up where I'm like, fuck, I'm going to fuck it up, or I don't know, I'm not even sure that's right, but like this insecurity or something about it where I'm like, there's a separate aversiveness that's like, I mean, usually when I'm feeling joyful about it, I'm not feeling aversive. But the fact is, even if I'm deep into it, like I need to like stop and I need to have a practice of like stopping and distracting myself and self-soothing myself and then coming back to it.
Mm,
Because if I just try to power through this level of fear builds of like,
mm.
I don't even know what the fear is, honestly. Like, you know what I mean? But in a way, it's like, um, I don't know, betraying the thing itself, falling off the horse. I don't know. You know what I mean? But
But this is
but
when we
that
talk.
is,
So
yeah,
when we talk about writer's block, I feel like
yeah.
that's a lot of it for me. Is I don't usually have it towards the end of a project, though.
No, I have it less. Yeah,
I have it at
now.
the beginning, right, where I've had an idea.
Yeah,
I'm like, and it can make me afraid to start, like
yeah,
because you have this beautiful thing in your head and you're like, once I start trying to put it down, I'm going to mess it
yeah,
up, right?
yeah, yeah,
And then I also have it all the way through editing. And so that for me,
yeah. Interesting.
drafting and editing are like, I feel like I've mostly got
Hmm.
drafting
Mm-hmm.
down in that, like
Mm-hmm.
when I'm drafting, I'm happy, like sometimes I have trouble starting, but once I'm
Yeah, yeah,
going, I enjoy it and I'm good. Um, Editing, it's such a constant questioning process.
yeah.
I have a hard time getting into a joyful mode with it. And
Interesting.
Jen Reese and I were talking on Facebook at one point, and I can't remember what I was talking about, something about writing blocks or whatever. And so, and she said, Marianne, I really think you need to really learn how to love editing, or learn how to,
Interesting.
how to like,
I think they're much more interleaved for me. I think you just do a
yeah,
thing where you just go, 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 and then you come back and put on a totally
yeah,
different hat. And I think I do
yeah,
that on much more micro increments, particularly in this
yeah,
project, because it's also
yeah,
like there's a third thing in this project because there's also
mhm,
programming, right? Because it's a choice of
yeah,
games. So I'm constantly like trying to figure out the structure, which
right,
I think you do anyway in a linear fiction, but it's like very explicit because there are choices and
right.
you're trying and variables and whatever. So it's kind of like I'm like, what would be, and I'm like going, what would be cool, but also like how will I operationalize that? Anyway, but I think, and I feel like there's a lot, and actually sometimes, it's interesting you say that about editing.
Oh
One of
wait,
the
and
things,
actually, wait, let me
yeah,
clarify. I think I mean revision rather than editing. So let's,
yeah, but I feel
but
like
yeah,
still that they're
but
marbled
both.
through with
Yeah,
me,
yeah, yeah.
and that in some sense I actually sometimes find revision more pleasurable than drafting. And so I will
Mm,
actually, that's one way I will take a break is if I'm drafting and drafting, and I feel like one of those cartoon characters that are like you're going on thin ice out into a lake, or one of those characters you've run off the edge of the cliff and your feet are still moving. Like there's a way in which I'm like I've gotten farther than I trust. Like that's
mm-hmm,
the fear, right? The fear is like, is this good? Is this, I don't know, am
mm,
I just going off on am I going to cut all these words? Have I just written 1,000 words I'm going to cut? Like that's part of the
mm,
fear, right? And one version of it. Anyway, but then if like, am I getting it over my head? Is
mm,
this going anywhere? And sometimes I will go back and revise in the sense of like rereading or playtesting or whatever, like going through the whole
mm.
thing and then like making little, that's soothing actually, to go
Is
through the
it
whole thing
really?
and go like, oh, and like fix up the language. That's a very soothing and pleasurable activity, just massaging the language, just moving stuff around,
Clean up
removing repeated
yeah,
words, whatever. That's like,
I'd agree with that. That kind of editing, totally
but
good.
it's also together with a larger level and think about like, should I be, and that's partly reassuring about like the structural thing of like, am I, because when I'm drafting, I don't know, like, am I just
Mm.
going on the wrong track? Is this, am I going to have to backtrack? And somehow like then going and rereading it is often like affirming that it's like, oh no, this is coming together. You know what I mean? And so, or if it's not, then I feel practical about it. Instead of having this
Yeah.
inchoate fear, I'm like, oh no, 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 okay, that wasn't right.
I
This has
love
to happen.
I love the moment of revision when I figure something out, like, oh, this
Yeah.
whole section should be up here and it'll work much better. Like
Right.
that is
Right.
that's a great moment, but
Yeah.
I think I find the long stretches of questioning stressful,
well,
right? And that's
I think that's a sign that you, when you're drafting, are able to turn the questioning off. I think that's interesting because
yeah,
I don't think I
yeah,
ever fully turn the questioning off. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
think I'm always bopping out. I mean, not ever.
yeah.
Like for like a
Yeah.
minute at a time, for like 5 minutes at a time, I'm just going. But like
Yeah.
after 5 minutes, I'm like, no, no, wait, does that come here with this? And does that the thing? And actually it's funny because I drove Corey crazy when we collaborated. When Cory Doctorow and I wrote True Names,
Mm.
he wanted to just be, I do 500 words, he does 500 words, I do 500 words, all the way to the end, and then we'd look at what we'd written. And I
Mm.
just could not operate in that mode.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
was
yeah.
constantly going back. He would do 500 words, I would do 500 words, he would do 500 words, I would do 500 words, and then go revise the 2,000 words from the beginning and like put everything together. Then he would do another 500 words, then I would
Hmm.
revise that. You know what I mean? It's like I
Yeah,
kept,
yeah.
because as soon as something did cohere, I think he was fine with there being inconsistencies, and it's like we'll deal with that in second draft. But I literally
Yeah.
once chapter one contradicted chapter two, once there was a thing in
Yeah,
chapter one
you
that
want to
which they
resolve
could not
it.
both be true, I could not, the machine breaks. I can't think of the
Yeah,
next word.
yeah.
Like the next word is a result of thinking of all the words so far. So as soon as there's an internal contradiction, I don't know what it's just,
So
it
let
does not
me,
compute, right?
I'll break down my process just a little bit more. So
Yeah,
typically the way I work, this is not always, but mostly, I'll figure out what's going to be in the scene.
yeah,
I'll draft the scene, right? Which is smooth and pleasurable because I already know what's going to be in it and the
yeah,
main beats, right? The
yeah,
little,
yeah,
and then there are the little surprises of the dialogue and whatever,
yeah,
which are enjoyable as well. I get
right.
to the end, and then usually before I get up and take my break, I spend, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes plotting
Hmm.
out the next scene, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And then so, and that's, there's some questioning happening there as I'm figuring it out.
hmm,
But it's short and contained, so it's not
yeah,
stressful.
yeah.
I'm not looking at the work as a whole, I'm just looking at the next scene, and it's generative. And then when I come back and draft again, I don't have any major decisions to make. I'm just drafting, right? And
Yeah.
so again, so I think this is, for me, that chunking process
And then what are the questions that come in revising? Like what, like,
in
do you know what I mean? Like,
revising, I'm like, well, I mean, like revising this last novel has been like, did I pick the right protagonist at all? Did I,
right, right, right,
does it
right,
make
right.
any, this whole
But here's
subplot
my
with
question. Do you
whatever,
think
like, is artificial, or, like, I don't know, like, maybe I should have started this book 3 years earlier, or maybe it needs to all be confined into 1 week, or, I mean, they're
so?
just,
My
so I don't
question
know.
is, like all those that you were reading the same words when you wrote the scene, right? Like all those words that made you have that thought about like, is
Yeah.
that should I have started 3 years later or 3 years earlier? You also read those words when you were drafting, right? But
Yeah,
the
but
thought, like,
I
should this
wasn't
be?
worrying about that then. Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. I mean, that I think is the difference is I think that,
Yeah.
and I don't know whether it's just that it's like a different set of faculties that you're not
Yeah.
engaging. You know what I mean? Like you're really putting those
Yeah.
back on the back burner, not engaging them, engaging different faculties, or whether you're actively suppressing. You know what I mean? Whether I don't
Yeah.
know I don't know if it takes any effort to put them aside, or if indeed they don't show up at all until you call on them. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah, I think they don't show up really. I think
yeah,
I'm in a different mode. It's like I'm thinking about like when I'm making food for a dinner party, right?
yeah,
Plan out my menu, and then it's just a question of dish after dish after, you're cooking for
right,
Thanksgiving. There's a schedule, there's a pattern. You're
yeah.
not going to want to make too many last minute substitutions because
It's actually funny because even when I'm cooking, I'm more like, even when I'm cooking, I might be like, but wait, what if we, like, I can't,
right,
it's
right.
hard for
Well,
me
so
to
that's the
stop
thing.
improvising.
So
It's hard for me to just execute.
I don't. And then, but what I do is at the end of it, there's the I
Taste
don't
and
know.
adjust kind of thing.
Well, more like, there's the critique session. Like, so, and this is the way
Ah,
this is the way my whole family operates, right? We'll have a big dinner.
yeah.
We'll all enjoy the dinner. And then afterwards, me and my mom and the aunties and so on, we'd sit around
Oh,
and
the
talk about it.
brainstorm. Yeah.
We talk
What
about
would
like
have,
which dishes were great, what was not so
yeah.
great, what should we have
Wow.
brought in instead,
Amazing.
blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And then that's where the vision
Yeah.
refinement happens. And
Right.
then, then we, like, oh, this was so good. And she was like, oh yeah, I added some lime juice this time. And like,
Uh-huh.
oh, right. And
Yeah.
so then all of that goes into the next round, right?
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of this kind of process, and I find that it's been
Yeah,
really useful for my life to like separate planning and executing. And like with
yeah,
scheduling and stuff, like that's why like I have a big
yeah,
spreadsheet that rules my
yeah,
life because I'm like I figured out I will have this many hours of exercise, this many,
yeah.
and then I don't need to think about it, I can just execute. But I find that very hard with creative stuff. I mean, particularly with
Mm,
writing, I find it very hard to Like I don't like if in revision I'm like, oh, this book should have started 3 years ago. That will not be the first time I had that thought. That will be a
Yeah.
thought that I was holding at bay all through drafting. Do you know what I mean? Like it will have,
Mm,
all the qualms will have occurred
yeah.
to me on the way. And I think that partly is why, like, that's what that it's actually you can't do both at once, but the effort of holding those at bay, those
Mm,
faculties aren't naturally just like asleep until I need them. Like they're always
mm,
there. So the effort of holding that kind of concern at bay and being like, just let's finish the scene. Maybe it starts 3 years later. Let's not worry about that for now. Like having to constantly do that
yeah.
is part of why like I need a break every, that's why
Yeah.
after 1,000 words, I'm like, all right, let's take a break because it's like,
Yeah.
that I don't have that. But I mean, it's kind of funny that for you, it's like one is very pleasurable and the other is aversive.
Yeah.
And for me, it's
Yeah.
like they're just mixed up together. So revising is
Right.
often more fun. Like in some ways, when I'm finished drafting and I'm revising, like revising can be unpleasant if it like goes like also the unraveling took forever to revise. There's so many drafts. If it goes off the rails and I feel like I'm floundering in the wilderness and I'm just like, how
Mm,
can I land this plane? Like that can
right.
be very hard. But a lot of the times it seems like like it seems lower stakes in a way. Like getting to the end is actually the thing I'm afraid whether it will happen or not, usually.
Yeah.
Um, and like once I've gotten to the end, I'm reasonably, it might take a while and be a painful journey, but I have more, well, not, that's not even true. There are some things I've thrown away even after
Mm,
like completely completing them. But like it feels a little more like my level of confidence has improved. So I'm going into revising feeling like, well, there is a thing. Maybe we can't make it work, but at least at this point, we gave it our best. Like we've got, it's got bones.
mm,
So, yeah. So often revising just feels like problem solving, figuring out puzzles. You know what I mean? On the
mm,
line level is pleasurable, but even on the slightly larger building block level,
yeah.
when I was Liz Gorinsky, when we were working on the Unraveling, had wanted different interludes. The Unraveling has a bunch of little
Mm,
interstitial bits where like right where like
mm-hmm,
this and that happens. I cut a bunch and added a bunch more. Some of the ones that are in there are really late, like the book report about what happens to
mm-hmm,
Fifth and Tree after the Unraveling is really late. I wrote another one at the same time that was like a talk show they go on, which I ended up
mm-hmm,
cutting. Like there was but those were really fun because that was like plugging in pieces that I was like,
mm-hmm.
oh, okay, yeah, this section is missing. I could come up with an entirely different because they were interstitial. Also, it wasn't like everything
Yeah.
had to the last line had to match with it wasn't a scene that I just
Yeah.
squeeze
Yeah.
in. It was more like just this different perspective I could drop in. Um, but that is a fun kind of, you know what I mean? That's drafting
Mm-hmm.
and revising because I'm like writing a little chunk to go in
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So Darius has been giving us the high sign for a
Oh,
little while that
okay.
we should take our intermission break.
Oh, yes,
So,
we
but
should.
I think this is a good point because what you're saying right now about the interludes and so on, I think I'd like to pick up after the break with talking about my new Patreon project and how
Hmm.
that is working in relationship to this kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think let's do that. And
Sounds good.
so we're pausing and we have no clever outro for pausing. We're
Stay human
pausing.
during the break. I know I,
There.
I know you can do it. You can stay
Mm,
human for that long.
well, they can. We're slime molds.
Yeah, we're
So
slime molds. Stay slime molds.
that's
Slime
right.
mold
Uh,
gods.
Slime mold gods. I think
The
the slime
slime
mold
mold gods
god.
have spoken.
Yeah. And they
That does
say,
feel very much like a that sort of early like I don't know 30s science fiction
oh,
Jar of Tang like it turns out
yeah,
they're in
yeah,
a yeah
yeah.
turns out they're slime
Um,
molds.
It's sounding very, my semester ended on Friday and being a slime mold for a while sounds extremely appealing right
Yeah,
now. I'm
yeah,
like, I
I
could
hear that.
just melt and be goo, right? You know, I'm just gonna be goo on the couch.
All right,
So,
so everybody be goo for 5 minutes. A
and then
five
we'll
minute
be
intermission
back.
to be goo,
All
and
right,
then we'll be back.
we're back. I got some food because I realized that was what I actually needed.
Me
And
too.
I actually,
I
it's
too
funny.
have some
I had
food.
this moment of like, oh, excellent. I had this moment of like, it feels professional to drink on camera, but not to
Oh, but
eat
not
on
to eat.
camera. But
Yeah,
I'm gonna do it anyway because you guys, you just
that's
have
right. Well,
to,
I mean, I
you
mean,
know.
you just have to work it into the whole cookbook vibe. If you feel like
Hmm.
this is the
That's right. This is my everything bagel with cream cheese. I did not do any cooking other than toasting it for a few minutes, and it's delicious. So
there you go.
we may
That's the
just
review.
give up cooking altogether. So um okay. So I do want to tell people about this Patreon thing. I want to kind of talk it out. So what I realized at some point last year was that I had been so focused on book length work that I had not been writing anything short, right? I had sort of started drafting some essays, those are in the works, but nothing's completed. And I hadn't thought about short fiction at all. I'd been working on novel revisions and also getting out the vegan cookbook. And also, oh, and I revised the cancer memoir, which should be out shortly. So, which is called Tornado, if you would like to read my breast cancer memoir. So,
Nice.
So I was thinking about like, well, how do I make myself write short fiction again? And that kind of came together with conversations I had with Lois McMaster Bujold at a convention once, where she was doing a coffee clutch, and so I got to interrogate her for an hour, which was fabulous because she's one of my favorite writers. And a moment of mourning, I just saw her post something recently saying that she thinks she's basically retired from writing now. And
Oh, wow.
and fine, she gets to stop, I guess, but I'm sad and I hope she changes her mind. So I want as much of her writing as we can possibly have. But okay, that said, I asked her, she had been writing these Penrick novellas and releasing them directly on Amazon. And I was a little surprised by that. I mean, I was enjoying them, happy to buy them, read them over and over again. But, she's a multiple Hugo Award winner. She has all these books out with Bain. And I was like, why are you releasing these on Amazon as ebooks? And she said that they were still going to come out from Bain at a later date as books, and but the ebook income was providing a steady stream. Writing books, you get like chunks, right? And she was finding that for her senior years, having that steady stream of income was made it much easier to just budget and have something that you could rely on. So I thought that was fascinating. And, I've been, my students, it's very interesting now, the last year or two, many of them have to be kind of persuaded to think about maybe, trying to find an agent doing traditional publishing, because their default is not that. Their default is most of them are on AO3. They've been writing for that audience. And if they're thinking about professionalizing it at all, they're thinking about releasing it on directly to the audience. And so anyway, that's just been kind of fascinating. And so
it's interesting. There's that trend, and there's also, though, I feel like it almost feels like maybe it's bifurcating, because I think there was a rage of ebooks for a while where everyone was like, it's all going to be ebooks. And I think there's been this backlash now where like people are very appreciative of the virtues of print books, but there's also a whole other ecosystem.
The indie publishers, and we really should get some on and interview them, because I don't know as much about this as I would like, but they talk about making the choice to go wide at some point when they're publishing, and that I think that means we're now going to release print as well as ebooks, right? So hit a wider market, right? And I think a lot of them are doing that, but they're still doing it themselves. They're not doing it through and they're
the indie publishers.
The indie authors are doing it themselves. They're not going
the indie
through
authors.
publishers.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're not going through publishers, right? So and some of them are doing very well with it. So it's a really interesting kind of set of things.
Yeah.
So I was not ready to dive into all of that, but I am trying to get my backlist up indie. So that's in the works. But in order to write short fiction, I was thinking, Ray Bradbury says you should write a story a week. And I was thinking like, I could. I have the time. I could write a short story a week in theory, right? I have a schedule that would allow for that. That seemed very intimidating to commit to. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. Writing a story every 2 weeks also seems very feasible, except that sometimes stuff happens, things come up, and you lose a week to something. So I decided a story a month should be
Yeah.
very manageable, right? That's
Yeah.
about 6 to 8 hours of drafting, especially if I'm planning to basically release it as is, in a
Hmm.
Dickensy sort of way of just putting it
Yeah.
out there, right? And not spend another month revising. And so
Right.
that's what, so 2 months ago, I committed to that. I set up a Patreon
Hmm.
tier of, I think it's $3 a month, and you get at the first of the month, which today's April 30th. So I think 30 days has September, April, June. Yeah, tomorrow I have to drop the next story, which means I
Yeah.
have to write 2,000 words today because I've got 2 more
Oh,
scenes to do.
okay.
That's okay. That's all right. Or I guess I have tomorrow as well, as long as it comes
Hmm.
out sometime
Sure.
that day. But it's working really well for me. I guess what I'm saying, so far, I'm only 2 months in, but I
Yeah.
really enjoyed writing the first one and dropping it. It felt very low stakes. And I
Yeah.
think that's a lot of it is
And
like
particularly
it.
if since you like drafting and don't like revising,
Yes, right. No, that's what I'm saying,
you're
right?
just
Like it
skipping the
is like
revising part.
it's the skipping the revising part. And so I could just do this and
Yeah.
do it indefinitely and maybe build up a big audience. Now, here's the funny thing is, so I was thinking, okay, what should this series of stories be? It's not just going to be random stories. We'll do a series. And I
Yeah.
put out a couple of possibilities of like fantasy series with a kitchen witch, blah, 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 blah. But what
Hmm.
we ended up settling on was something set in my science fiction
Who's
universe.
we?
Facebook, Facebook
Ah, we
commenters.
Facebook. Yes, the group
Yes,
mind. Okay.
yes,
Sure.
who voted on this and gave feedback. And
Nice.
what we ended up setting on was something set at the University of All Worlds with college
Hmm.
students in this science fiction universe. And I was like, this is something I know so intimately after
Yeah.
teaching college and being a student and everything. I mean, living in
Yeah.
academia, I can do this with my eyes shut. And
Hmm.
so I started it and I'm really enjoying it. Like I wrote this first story about a student starting on the first day of classes, and I was like, oh, I know exactly what this is like for them. And then, but
Are the characters from the other things gonna like recur? Are there like callbacks to like?
they probably will. Some of them will show up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it will all be interwoven eventually because
Hmm.
this is the funny thing is I can't not do that apparently. So like I don't have to, like there's nothing saying I can't
Yeah.
just drop little
Right.
low-key stories
Sure.
that have no complicated bigger things, but
Hmm.
that's not how my brain works. So of
Yeah.
course, as soon as I started writing this, I started thinking, oh, it'd be great to bring this character back in here.
Right.
And so
Right.
suddenly now it's all connected to my world and
Yeah.
the other books. And I thought it would be a funny idea. I was like, oh, it's a first day of classes, I'll tell some cute little story, and then there'll be a body, and I was like, and this was just like a hilarious, silly idea. But then
Uh-huh.
I did it, and then I started writing the next story, and I was like, well, she's still going to have to deal with the body. And now I realize I'm writing essentially a murder mystery.
Right.
Like,
Of course.
eventually, I'm going to have 10 to 20 of these stories. Each one
Yeah.
is going to reveal a little more of like what
Mm,
happened there.
sure.
And by the end of the series, people will know what happened. But then I'm like, is there any reason not to then take all that and try and revise it into a novel?
Sure.
And now I've made myself a bigger project again. And like the
You've
stakes are
snuck back
higher.
into
I know, right?
yeah.
And it's
Hmm.
so I don't know. I was somehow going to connect
Interesting.
all of that. We'll see what happens with it.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll get abandoned, but people have signed up for $3 a month, so I feel a certain commitment
Well, but
to like,
maybe the arciness can be. I mean, the point is that
yes,
if you
yeah,
don't feel the nice thing way of setting up the structure is you can write stories that may end up
mm-hmm.
in a novel, but not all of them have to end up in a novel.
Right,
So if you just want to take
mm-hmm.
some tangents that aren't where
Mm-hmm.
nobody solves anything about the body,
Mm-hmm.
in a few of the stories, like some
Yeah,
of the people in that dorm may not care about the body and they're off doing their own thing. So
yes,
you
yes,
have a
no,
little
and I
more
think
room.
so. Yeah, and
Is it tightly focused on the same characters, or is it kind of like an aggregate of?
at least, well, so far the first character briefly met one of the others, and
Mhm.
that person is now the protagonist of the second story.
Right, right, right.
But I think
Tag team.
but I think fairly soon we're going to get stories from points of view of professors as well as students. So it's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
start spreading outward
Uh-huh.
from that. And I have to give a shout out. This is absolutely heavily influenced by Alexandra Aaron's Tales of Magic University,
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
a giant, very sexy, magical shared world, not shared world, interconnected story
Yeah.
university series that she wrote that I loved. And so
Hmm.
I have that in mind as I'm doing this. So thanks, Alexandra. so um so kind of connecting it to what we were talking about before, I
Yeah.
guess I'm finding it useful, yeah, because it is, it's giving me the pleasure hits without the the stress. I think with
Mm.
revision, what is stressful to me is this fear of making the wrong decision, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and this kind of sense of like it's going to be fixed, it's going to be, and I don't know why I feel like it's going to be fixed. I feel like that's maybe laziness on my part. Like I'm not,
Mm. You
like
don't want
part
to
of my
revise
brain.
more than once.
Exactly, right? Like there's part of my brain saying like, well, you're
Huh.
not going to want to revise this more than once, so you better get it
Yeah.
right this time. And
Huh.
maybe I need to like somehow
That's
learn to
funny
let
because
go
in a
of
way,
that.
I
Yeah.
feel like I just revise as much as necessary, but I feel like that I have that stress when I'm drafting because I'm like, is this going to get cut? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's the
Mm.
same. Yeah, I have that earlier.
I actually cut almost nothing. That I also thought that
Huh.
was interesting about what you were saying. Like, you might cut 1,000 words. I'm like, I almost never cut.
I once cut 40,000 words.
Yeah.
That's the unraveling. That's when resilience became the unraveling. That was a 40,000
Hmm.
word cut. I mean, I don't usually cut that much, but I mean, this choice of games thing, I'm not doing that very much,
Hmm.
interestingly.
Because you can
But
always
I
add
think I
more
don't.
threads. You can always add
Right.
more threads to it, right? So why
Yeah,
wouldn't you
and
cut?
right, exactly. It's sort of like that is
Hmm.
interesting that like that there's a less of an emphasis on economy. Like if you're writing one story, it has to be like everything has to be the right thing. And
Hmm.
like and the thing we focus on has to be the thing we should focus on. Whereas if the reader's kind of co-deciding what we focus on, then it's
Hmm.
like, well, I mean that may become less. I mean, I don't know if I've managed to, it's interesting because sometimes I get myself into trouble. I mean, I'm now at the end of it, and I am finding that like every loose end, like I've just got my
Hmm.
mantelpiece is full of Chekhov's guns, right? There's
Hmm.
just way too many guns on the mantelpiece. So it's like everything that and in some, while I was just sort of, I was just drafting and being like, this is fun. And like, I'll introduce like, well, maybe this could
Hmm.
happen or like this could happen. And it's like all of those things then will feel like loose ends if there's no way to get to them. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
If there's no way that ever pays off. If it
Right.
doesn't pay off on every playthrough, that's fine because there's sort of
Hmm.
like there could be things that are quite difficult. I think it's actually by design, it's a virtue if there's some things that are really hard to get to, right? Like
Hmm.
if getting to be, run off with the klezmers and be in a polythruple with them is like only possible one out of every 50,000 playthroughs. Like you have to navigate exactly the right thing. That's cool, right? That gives a
Hmm.
replayability kind of vibe of like this is the hard thing. As long as it's not like sort of central. You know what I mean? As
Yep.
long as it's kind of like I mean it's not like yeah, I mean I don't think if you only save the shtetl on one every 50,000 playthroughs that would be bad.
Hmm.
But it's like I don't know. Those are and that's anyway. So but I think that does mean I have to cut less in a way.
Hmm.
But then the danger of that, of course, is that everything I don't cut, I have to fulfill on somewhere. So anyway,
Yeah. I think when I wrote those two choose your own adventure books for Penguin way back when.
yeah,
Um, and I remember with Catherine in the City, there was a point where I was like, I'm going to have too many endings. And Choice of Games, I think, makes you like, it's part of their model to have things wrap back together periodically, or at
yeah,
least,
yeah.
yeah.
Although
And
lots of endings is good. I mean,
okay, so, but for
what you don't
the,
want is lots of chapter threes,
So for the
right?
choose your own adventure, I had no restrictions. I could do
Yeah,
whatever. So I
yeah,
was doing like a branching tree,
right,
but
sure.
at some point I was like, you know what? I think there's going to be, I didn't in the old choose your adventures,
Yeah,
there were lots of cases you died, right?
yeah,
And I
yeah, yeah.
didn't want to actually kill anybody, but I was like, there
Right,
needs to be a fail condition. So the
right.
fail condition is you find all of San Francisco's sex life too much for you, and you end up on a bus going back to Indiana, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Okay,
and so
right.
there are various. So then I could like take various paths and be like, one
Yeah, yeah.
option
Where
is you get on the bus. Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
yeah.
So that did help simplifying things and
That's the
like making it
collector of
more
loose
manageable.
threads.
Yeah,
You just get
right.
on the
So
bus. Don't know what to do, get
yes.
on the bus.
So I don't know whether
It's a
that helped.
gentler version of having them hit by a bus.
Yeah.
which is a traditional way to end a story that
Yeah.
you don't know where you're
Yeah.
going.
And
In this
and
case, they're in
maybe,
the bus.
like maybe having had all of these experiences, the boy you left in Indiana is going to seem more
Right.
appealing and it won't be so bad,
Well,
right? You know?
that is a very interesting thing. There's this one essay that the Choice of Games people wrote that I thought was really fascinating, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
there's multiple endings. There's one kind of multiple ending where it's like you wrote multiple endings, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's another kind of ending where it's actually the same words, but it
Right.
means something totally different based on
Right.
like path
The path
dependency,
you
right?
took. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they have this example of like some Napoleonic War kind of Aubrey and Maturin era game or something, and there's this you're the English captain and there's a French captain,
Mm-hmm.
and you can either be bitter in the middle, you're either bitter enemies or you like fall in love or you like, are buddies who fight a common threat
Mm-hmm.
together or whatever. And then in the end, because there's like the Napoleonic Wars have a pause in them, like in that
Yeah.
where I think Austin's Persuasion happens,
Yeah.
where it's like there was a war and then they were at peace again and there's a war again. So I think in the beginning you're at war and in the middle part, like you're civilians, you're both out of the military and you meet and like it could
Mm-hmm.
be various things, and in the end you're having this battle again, like at the end you're back on duty and you're not
Yeah.
gonna, you're both honorable and like serving your nation, so
Right.
like you're firing cannonballs at each other, but like the valence of it is totally different for the reader if you're firing these cannonballs at
Yeah.
your lover who now you've
Right.
been separated by the tides of war, or your bitter enemy that you've always hated and he was your rival even in peacetime, whatever, like it's all
Yeah.
totally different even though the
I
words
love
are the same.
that.
So that's
Yeah.
really a cool
I think it's challenging to write that last scene in a way that it
yeah,
holds all those
that works
possibilities.
for all
Yeah.
these. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's super fun though. So
Yeah.
um I guess I kind of want to transition out of this to something else that we were talking about pre-show. We've been, a lot of this has been kind of like very nitty-gritty process of like the actual writing. And where I am right now
We
is
should be
it's
sort of transitioning into wrapping up mode because we've got like 15 minutes left. But anyway, go ahead.
15, 30,
Ish.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But just where I am right now is that my semester has ended. I have finished a bunch of projects. I have one that's like about to go out the door to an editor, a novel. And then I've got this little Patreon thing. And I'm on an academic schedule, right? So I have now 3.5 months coming up where aside from WisCon and the week at Clarion, I'm unscheduled. And what happens typically in academia is, professors are sprinters. We sprint through the semester, we collapse, puke, etc. at the end of the semester, as sprinters do. And so that's where I am right now. I am like, I'm going to go lie down in the garden and think about weeding after we finish recording this podcast, right? And
In which we are slime molds.
in which we're slide moles. And then but it's and you have to leave yourself some rest time, right? It's when I went to
Yeah.
Ragdale and did a residency there, I slept for like the first day and a half, and I was
Yeah.
feeling a little stressed about that until I like went and looked it up, and like people are like, no, that's what you do. You get to
Hmm.
a residency program, the first thing you do is collapse and
Yeah.
sleep because we're all chronically underslept. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, all right. And then I spent a day or two reading, right? So there's the
Hmm.
whole refueling the well
Yeah.
stretch. And then there was a great temptation to play video games or start binge watching something. And
Yeah.
that's the danger moment. You have
Right.
to be like, yes, I could do that. And then I would lose a third of my summer,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
wouldn't feel good at the end of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So I guess I wanted to just talk about like, how do you structure, whether you have a 3-day weekend or a 3-week retreat or a residency program, or in my case, 3 months, how do you approach structuring that time? And for me, it's collapse a little,
Hmm.
rest a little, refill the well a bit, but then I actually generally want to set a schedule and I want to like make a plan so that I don't end up in that state at the end of the summer where you're counting down like 2 weeks left, 1 week left, 3 days
Yeah.
left, and I have not done as much as I hope to get done. And I know you're like sort of in that right now, but
Yeah.
even without having had a big stretch with nothing to do. So,
Right.
um,
Right. Well, I don't have that many big stretches with nothing to do. It's going to be very interesting because I mean, like, so the big stretch is coming up next fall when I seriously
Hmm.
dialed down the day job to like,
Hmm.
one afternoon a week. Um, and I, basically more or less quit my day job.
Hmm.
Because but I'm not an academic, so I have like at most like, I don't know, like I had a week vacation. I mean, I occasionally take a week vacation, but they're usually like
But
with
you're
all the kids at the
traveling and
beach or
yeah.
right, or like I went and did, I mean, I got a lot of writing done both when we were like at the beach with the kids and their cousins and
Hmm.
uncle, and also when I went to go see a friend in Italy,
Hmm.
to stay with her for a week. I don't know, like I just because I
Yeah.
over the past couple of years I've been working a lot on
Right.
this, I was like, okay, mornings are going to be writing, and I did get a bunch done, but there's never like I don't
Yeah.
ever have a day that doesn't have other stuff in
Yeah.
it.
See, like
Like,
last
so
year, what I did was I did like every month I tried to go away for at least 4 or 5 days and have a
yeah,
writing retreat, right? And that was
yeah,
super productive for me. I guess I'm just thinking, I know that there are a lot of people whose like the dream is to quit the day job, right? And
yeah,
just write all the time. And maybe I just want to warn them a little, like it's more challenging than you'd think
yeah,
to
yeah,
like to write when you don't when you cannot you think like, oh, I can write tomorrow. I'll be able
yeah.
to write the next day. There's no
Well,
reason
I
for
do
me.
think it's going to be, well,
Yeah.
that is interesting. And I feel like that, I mean, I feel like now I'm sort of ready after however many years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it it feels like I did used to feel like, I mean, it is interesting on the other end of this, like when I
Mm-hmm.
first started deciding to write, I sort
Mm-hmm.
of missed those days because it was a lot, I didn't get a lot done productivity wise, but it was very fertile and growthsome, right? And I would like
Mm-hmm.
wander around like, I don't know, downtown looking at things and dreaming. Like that was a big part of like becoming like getting myself ready to be a writer, right? And but when I had a kid, like
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly my time was super constrained, that was a jump forward in efficiency. Like I was the
Mm-hmm.
sort of like, oh, maybe I'll write today. I don't know. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be at the cafe and like maybe I don't know, like after wandering around and procrastinating
Mm-hmm.
and looking at the bookstore, like maybe I'll write a line. And once I had kids, it was like, this is the hour when someone else is
Right.
watching the kid go. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so there is that focus, and in some sense,
Right.
it's like, and I've just always been doing this around some kind of day job. I
Yeah.
mean,
And
I'm only
and
working
this
half time. I have a half-time day job at
usually
this point.
usually this is the conversation I have with my students where
Yeah,
they are in class full time. Some of them have part-time jobs, and then they're
yeah,
trying to write on top of that. They might have elder care or
right,
child care responsibilities as well.
right,
And so for them,
yeah,
I'm like, part of why we do the 10-minute writing exercises in
yeah,
class is to give them a visceral sense of like, even if you only write 10 minutes a day, if you
yeah,
do it reasonably consistency, it piles up, right? And you do
yeah,
actually end
yeah.
up with something. So like, that
And
train
also
ride home,
you have
yeah.
plenty of time to like start gently restructuring your life to have, maybe you've got
Mhm.
10, maybe you got 20, maybe you got a half an hour. Like,
Right.
I think a lot, but it is I mean, it is very important to get away from this. I think I suffered from a mindset of like, go big or go
I,
home. Like, I know
right.
like, water wears away rock over 1,000 years, right? Like
Yeah.
if you have a thing where every day it's more likely you'll write than not, at least a
Right.
little, that is far more potent than if you have some,
Right.
one shining time when you can do the thing. It's not,
Yeah.
but
So
yeah,
you've gone from, you now have a half-time job and
I
you
have
have
a half-time
time
job.
scheduled to
And my
write
kids are
during that.
big. I
Yeah.
have time job. My
Yeah.
kid, my kids are big, so they're
Right.
not. I mean, it's like it's been a very gradual transition of like more and more time opening up to write,
Right.
and
So
yeah, and
you're now facing the moment it's coming, right? Where you're going to
yeah,
have a lot of unstructured time.
right,
And
right,
do you have a
yeah.
plan for how you want to structure it at that point?
I feel like it is true that I got a lot of writing done on occasionally if I have trips and I treat them as writing retreats. I mean, I went to a have I mentioned this? I went to a writing retreat this last fall with
Mm-hmm.
this is the only like writing retreat officially that, like organized by somebody else that I've been to in years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in Switzerland with well, I mean, I guess not counting like a day to write at WisCon, but which we often do. But like
Mm-hmm.
this was like this writing retreat organized by the Swiss SIFWA, basically the
Hmm.
Verein Schweizer Fantastik Autoren, so the like Swiss science fiction writers group,
Hmm.
um, and who are great. And it's funny. I mean, it's funny because I write in English, so like they're all writing in
Right.
German. This group, so
Mm.
it's like there's a whole piece missing where it's
Right.
like I can't critique on a line level. I
Mm.
can't critique their manuscript in German. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like we are literally like in separate
Hmm.
universes in a way. But at the same time, a lot of it's shared. And I went to this thing, and the hilarious thing about it was this was just like such an intensely productive thing, partly because they're Swiss. So
Right.
so on a American writing retreat, I feel like some writing gets done, but there's a constant temptation that like obviously not all Americans are extroverts. Many Americans would like to sit with their computer, and I mean, particularly writers would like to sit
Hmm.
with their computer and write the whole time. But there's a general vibe of like it's very easy to slip into a mode of like chatting and
Hmm.
like or like kind of a performative like being excited about things, geeking out about things together. Like it'd be easy to lose an afternoon till or at least an hour to.
Hmm.
And the Swiss, they're Swiss, so they were very, like I was like right. They were like and the thing about being a Swiss is like their breakfast was very chatty. Everybody was, everybody like talks together. It's a very communal conversation. We're like eating the lovely food that everybody brought, whatever. And then like there's an invisible clock, like the time,
Hmm.
like everybody puts away the food, cleans the thing, starts writing, and it's like 3 hours of like clickety clackety click. And I was like, this is amazing. I have to either write or fall asleep. Like those are my like I would occasionally just like go drowsily like lie down and then return to the thing. But it was just like there was a boy, are they focused, the Swiss. And then
Yeah.
like dinner time would come and everyone would put and they didn't have Americans would also like chat a bunch and then be like right into the night being like, oh my God, I'm gonna
Hmm.
get this done because I promised myself. And they were like definitely like after dinner, they cleared that and they played like card games, whatever. It was just like
Hmm.
this is the time for the Swiss are very like this is the time for relaxing and this is the time for working. So that was very like I got to ride that wave. That was great.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I don't know that
So wait, can I
yeah,
just say,
sure.
I feel like every time I see something set up like that, I think that is probably better. It's more efficient. I
Mm.
would probably enjoy it more. It all makes sense. And then the little voice comes up. You can't tell me what to do. Right? It's like,
Well, nobody was
yeah,
telling. It was very
I
communal.
know,
Nobody was
right.
the hall monitor. Nobody was telling anybody
I
what to
know,
do.
but
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
would
yeah.
feel it. I would feel it even
You
if
would
no one
feel it.
was.
Yeah,
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 and I'd be like, it would, I would have like a knee jerk
yeah. Well,
reactionary
it would be
response.
interesting to test because
Yeah,
maybe you would. I believe it. But on the other hand, they are Swiss, so
yeah.
they're just so unassuming. Like there's so
Mm,
like there wasn't any of this. Like I feel like you could go to writing workshop in America where they were like definitely hardcore, like all
yeah,
tippity tappity.
yeah.
But there would be a certain amount of like I don't know, just a certain amount of um assertive like you know what I mean like I sort of identification like this we're the sort of
Yeah.
people who do this so we're going to do it and then maybe I would
Mm.
also have that reaction but they were just like they would I don't know it just anyway
Hmm.
it was a soft vibe
And to be fair, I'll tell everyone the SLF does co-writing from 11 to 2 on
yeah
Chicago time on Saturdays. Anyone's welcome. And we do have a format for that where we check in at the
yeah
top of the hour for 10
right
minutes, we chat, and then we go off and write. And I don't that works fine for
yeah
me.
yeah yeah
So
you don't rebel
I don't get
but of course
triggered.
you
Yeah.
set it up
Well,
anyway so the but I have to say that I don't know. I mean, you said, do I have a plan for that? I feel like I do feel like for certain things it might be great to like go away or have a workshop or something like a kind of uh I am worried about the phase of like coming up with a brand new idea or starting fresh with
mm,
something or like sort of that's been so long that I've had one project lined up after another where I'm just
mm,
like doing the thing that like just the dreaming and coming up with something new. I
mm,
feel like that was another me. You know what I mean?
mm.
Like literally, I
Well,
mean, it's
you also don't work in parallel, right? Like I have
I
3 to 5 projects
I
going.
kind of no, I work
Yeah.
massively in parallel in a way, but I maybe try not to. But I mean, it's not like I have like 12 open things, but I'm a little suspicious. In a way, it's like if I
Mm,
finish something with short things, I feel like I finish it quickly, it almost has better chances. Because if I have a
mm,
short story that's been unfinished for 5 years, is it ever going to get finished? I don't
mm,
know. Maybe it will. Sometimes they do,
yeah.
and sometimes but it's like it's very I don't know that my bang for the buck finishing those things that have been lying around because I really haven't paid much attention to them since the unraveling. It's been hard while focusing on the novel. I mean, I took major breaks. The unraveling took so long partly
Mm-hmm.
because I did take breaks and do other things. But like once I'm really going on something, and I haven't touched any short stories since
Mm-hmm.
like for like I don't know, maybe a year or something while I've been trying to finish this. So maybe that's not true. Anyway, so I do feel like maybe a work like a retreat or some kind of breaking up the routine would be good in that case where it's like now I have to maybe. But in terms of like the kind of thing I'm doing now, I actually feel like partly this is because I'm like on the verge of empty nester. Actually, as we
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm like a reverse empty nester now
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, like Aviva's coming, she's not coming home, but she's coming like she was in the Netherlands and she's going to be in Freiburg. So it's like she's going to be much closer. And
Mm-hmm.
Noah's sticking around for a while and going to University of Basel. So it turns out it's not so empty nest, but they're so big and so their plates are
Yeah.
so full and they're doing things that like, I don't have, my life has sort of, and I'm very aggressively delegating in a lot of realms. Like Migvan, I used to like 10 years ago, Migvan was like a whirlwind in which a
Mm-hmm.
few hands on deck, including me, were
Yeah.
like desperately trying to. Now, like I feel like it's kind of a well-oiled, I mean, knock on wood, but I feel like it's kind of a
Yeah.
Cain and Horror. It's kind of a
I had,
well-oiled machine.
yeah, yeah. Thursday night, I had a 5 hour school board meeting, and
Yeah,
I definitely came out of it thinking, all right, 2 more years. I've got 2 more years on school
right,
board. And
right.
I have promised, I said it out loud on Facebook. I am not running in the next election cycle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
told Kevin, don't let me run in the next election cycle. I'm
Right,
going to want to. And
right.
like, tell me
Well,
no.
but
Yeah.
that used to be this all-consuming. Like Esther used to
Yeah.
be fretting about. Like I was just Big Von like ate my life for a while when it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
when it was a crisis with only three people left on the board, and I was
Sure. Yeah.
but now it's like there's been enough momentum. There's been enough like this. It's the same thing as we were saying about like the gradual. Like if you just keep getting, it's actually two things that call back to two moments in this conversation. The thing you
Mm-hmm.
were saying about therapy, about like if you have all these contentious things that are causing stress, and you just I think this is something I said to Jed at one point using the analogy of Big Fun. If you just have if you just have more moments where everybody's enjoying
Mm-hmm.
themselves, the temperature just calms down and it becomes a
Mm-hmm.
self-fulfilling prophecy. In the other direction, you get a virtuous cycle. Like there's
Right.
been enough of that. We've managed to stave off contentious things long enough to fill the time in between moments that we have to
Well,
deal with them with happiness. Like that.
and this is, I think, part of why Zoom meetings were so hard during the pandemic,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you'd
Right.
come in, you'd do all the work of the meeting, you'd leave
And
again,
yeah,
and
where
it
would be the fun?
where's the fun,
Right.
right? Where's the like
Exactly.
socializing as you're getting snacks and
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
else,
yeah. Yeah.
right? So,
And just delivering like well and the big one is a thing where what everybody is there for is to like come
mhm.
be feel like they're in community together, so like the more you can deliver that and the less you can like have big knockdown drag out board meeting
Yeah.
fights about or general
Hmm.
meeting fights about contentious things. Anyway, that just feels like I've been able to like yeah, I was years ago I was in like how long do I have to still do this, like
Yeah.
when can I get out of this, and now I'm like it's
Yeah.
like and so I actually feel like I don't know, like I like having the time. I feel like I've grown my muscle of using the time to now where I just would like to push things to the sides of my day. So I like
Hmm.
I have like, you know, this whole
Hmm.
more like I usually work starts between like 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. because they're on an American
Hmm.
schedule. And like by the time I get there, I'm still jealous of like I'd still like to have till 5 p.m. to like, or 7 p.m.
Hmm.
to like keep till I keep trucking. I don't know. I'm not, I'm kind of, and I also feel like this micro schedule management of like, I just do my spreadsheet. Like I just follow
Hmm.
this complicated orchestrated deal I have with myself. Like as
Yeah.
long as I do that, like it'll be, it sort of feels, I don't know. I think certainly
Yeah.
finishing a big project will be painless. I don't know what starting things will be like. That is like that
Well,
I'm a
so
little nervous about.
I will tell you the bits that help me
Yeah.
when I have these summers of unstructured time, right?
Yeah.
Is it's I'm a morning person.
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
lark. I'm up early, and it's
Right.
pretty key to start my day right. Like
Right.
so, so it's ritualizing. It's
Yeah.
sort of saying to myself, it's fine if you only write for 5 minutes or an
Yeah.
hour. It's fine if you only garden for 5 minutes or an hour. Like these are like the
Yeah.
two goals. The two goals every day: do some writing, do some gardening. and start them early. And, and that usually works really well in
Hmm.
that if I actually do that, and
Yeah.
and again, the ritual, like get up, make my tea, get my meds, take my meds, maybe goof off with Polytopia for half an hour while I'm eating breakfast. That's
Hmm.
fine. But then once I'm done with that round of the game or whatever, it's time for the next thing, which is go out
Yeah.
into the garden or go to the shed to write. Like
Yeah.
they're like right next to each other, so you can kind of do both. Um, then I'll usually then either, garden and write for 3 or 4 hours. Right. And so
Yeah.
if I don't do that though, I can easily go the day without doing any of it. And feeling
Yeah.
this nagging sense of stress all day long and that little
Right.
voice saying I should be writing, which my
I feel like
therapist
I feel like I
had,
used to do that more in terms of like the specific.
yeah.
I mean, it is certainly getting up early, huge effect. Like if I can write
Mhm.
early,
Yeah, I have no advice for
I'm much
not
better.
night people. I don't know how they do it. So it's like a whole
Yeah.
nother thing.
I mean,
So
sometimes I can go late with some things, but mostly getting up early is a huge, like getting into bed is half the battle. Like actually getting myself to
mm,
go to bed at 10 p.m. or something
right.
is like that is an extreme high predictor of productivity.
Yeah.
But I think also that the uh that I've become like this thing about the spreadsheet that rules my life, where it's basically like goals for the day of like, and it's so quantified and it's so like I have to
Mm.
exercise for 24 minutes. Like I just look it up in the morning. That's like a ritual where
Ben,
I look at this.
would you
Yeah.
be willing to share your spreadsheet with the community? Is it a
Well, sure, I guess. I don't know. Maybe. Sure.
think about
It's
it. I
very
think
complicated.
I know,
Yeah.
but like,
It's
like
very,
think,
I mean, I think it'd be more interesting to talk up to like do a demo or something because I think the actual spreadsheet is
yeah,
so Byzantine that it's like and so specifically tailored.
I'd
But I
love to
think
see
it's
a demo. That would be awesome.
yes, it might be worth like I mean, it'd be cool to have like a session where we come and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
make a spreadsheet for somebody. But like because it's just at this point so many I mean it's I'll show it to you. It's
yeah,
hilarious, but it's like so many columns and so hyper
yeah, yeah.
specific.
I love it.
Um but basically the great thing where it's like before I was like, well, I have to do this or whatever. Now I'm kind of like I feel like there's a certain amount of flexibility of like if I want to go exercise, I could go exercise. If I want to like clear out emails, like clear out emails, whatever. But I'm less likely to get stuck because like with emails, it's like nine. The current
Hmm.
target is nine. Nine emails. When my
Hmm.
inbox is down to nine, I'm done. You know what I mean? Like
Interesting.
I don't need to, which so there are always some that are like hard to deal with and like float to the
Yeah,
bottom, and that's fine. I'm not trying to get to zero. I'm trying to get to nine right now. Like
yeah.
there's actually because this is so geeky and hilarious about the spreadsheet. There's actually a formula where at one point during the year it will get down to zero. Like there, you
Mm.
know what I mean? Like it gradually
Hmm.
goes nine, eight, seven, and then there's a period. There's a point where I like have to clear my inbox. So I have to do all those things, but not every week. Sometimes it's just at the moment it's
I
nine.
just for anyone who's drowning in emails, I'll just note that I currently have 1,300 in my inbox, and that's not the worst it's been. There was one
Yeah,
point where it got up to 5,000, and I
yeah,
then literally spent a summer clearing
yeah.
email. I got
It
to
really
in
makes me
I
miserable.
got to inbox zero by the time the
Yeah,
semester started, and then kept it kind of low for a while. And then I got busy and it started creeping up again.
yeah,
And now
yeah,
I'm gonna have to spend a chunk of time this summer clearing. I mean, not
yeah, yeah.
hopefully not the whole summer, but thanks everyone. And I don't know what the slime mold god sign off should be. Stay slushy.
Stay slimy.
Stay
No,
slimy.
don't do that. No,
No,
that
no,
sounds
I don't
bad.
know. We don't
No.
want to say slimy. Stay,
Like dissolve into goo.
yeah, dissolve into glue. Be malleable, you know. Maybe don't be quite so
Stay
attached to
fecund.
your rigid spreadsheet.
Yeah. Hey, where'd that come from?
No, no, the rigid spreadsheet
Wow, you're throwing my
is
spreadsheet under the slime bus.
it's serving Ben well. So he's going to come back and demo his spreadsheet
Terrific.
for us at some future
Perhaps.
point. No, I
Yeah.
want to see it. I'm really curious about this now. And I actually, I show my students like the tracking sheet that I use, and I literally for submissions, and I pass it
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
the class, and they're
Sure.
like, oh, like it helps to see these things, I think. So
Well, it's just that at this point it has grown to incomprehensible Byzantine complexity. But yes, we should probably have a sample version or something.
you can make a
A
simplified
scaled
version.
down,
Yeah,
simplified version.
that sounds good. Okay.
But I mean, I will do a tour of the spreadsheet
Mhm.
in its all its
Nice.
Byzantine glory. But I think that probably like it's kind of like it's not an early adopter format. Like sometimes I talk to
Hmm.
people at the chore list and like
Yeah.
which is grown
Sure.
into they've merged. But with the chore list, it's like the very simple version of it is very appealing. It's actually the same thing in software development. If you could show somebody a Kanban board that's got like to do, doing, done, it's like that's
Hmm.
very easy to understand and like everybody can adopt that and whatever. If you see an actual team, they've got like 16 columns. They've got like stage for deployment, whatever.
Mm.
Not what you need. You need to make your own.
Right.
We
Right.
made you
So,
one.
yeah, maybe we can
Yeah.
talk through making one. I mean, I don't have a spreadsheet. Maybe we should make one for me. So,
If you want.
yeah,
But I think it's applying the general principle.
yeah,
Not everybody
yeah.
needs the same thing. You need to figure out what's gonna make the thing you want to have happen downhill. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? What makes you just accidentally fall? The spreadsheet is set up so that if I just follow my laziest, most basic instincts, I accidentally fall into writing.
Mhm.
And it does not. It is a willpower prosthesis.
Right.
Because I
Yeah.
lack willpower,
Yeah.
I have this
A-
instead.
And actually, you know, the for gardening, the thing that I do is I say, well, I'm just going to take my tea and my phone out and take some photos in the garden and wander
Yeah.
around. And
Yeah.
if I do not, and that feels
Right.
effortless
Yeah.
and
Yep.
and
And you might
pleasurable.
accidentally garden.
Well, then you do because then
Yeah.
you're like, oh,
Right.
I don't want that
Oh,
plant
maybe I'll
over
just
there. Yeah.
exactly. You can
Yeah.
sucker yourself into accidentally doing the things that you want yourself to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It's the
Okay,
principle.
I'm pretty sure slime molds would not go on this long, so we're
Well,
gonna say
would they?
goodbye.
Maybe they just
No?
flow slime moldily. All right.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Stay slimy and relaxed. No, don't do that.
No.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.